I put you in this good man's care many years ago and have kept an eye on you ever since. How did you do that, sir? We live far from here. Oh, I have my ways, replied Merlin. But you still managed to surprise me. The sword-pulling contest is tomorrow, and you pulled it out today, he said with a smile. But what is to become of me now? Asked Arthur. Well, let us start tomorrow, replied the old sorcerer. We must still have the contest to prove to the world that you are the rightful heir. I will come for you when the time is right. But after that, sir, what is my future? Asked the boy. Merlin thought about this question carefully. He wasn't at all sure whether the boy was prepared for his answer. Finally, he spoke. You own your future. You alone. Arthur breathed deeply and thought of all the goodbyes he would have to say. What time tomorrow, sir? He asked. After all have tried and failed, replied Merlin. I will be ready, sir, said Arthur. Then he rose, bade Merlin farewell, and silently returned to his tent. On Christmas morning, as soon as the service ended, those who wished to try for the throne formed a line next to the stone. Leading the line was King Urien of Gore, husband to Margaise, Uther Pendragon's adoptive daughter. Ever since the king's death, Urien had claimed that he was the rightful heir. Indeed, he took his position with a great sense of authority and confidently gave the sword a tug. Then again, and again, Urien was sweating and pulling furiously. Finally, he asked to stop. Next came King Lot of Orkney, husband to Morgan le Fay. King Lot felt certain that his wife's magical powers would assure his victory. But even though he pulled with all his might, he couldn't move the sword. After that, King Mark of Cornwall, King Leodegrance of Cameliad, and King Rience of North Wales all failed. The Dukes of Winchester, Colchester, Worcester, and Hampshire tried and failed. Some thought the longer they waited, the looser the sword would become, thereby improving their chances. But this wasn't the case, for the sword never budged, not even slightly. Kings, dukes, counts, and knights all failed. Finally, as the line neared its end, the crowd grew impatient for a winner. Merlin went for Arthur. Sir Hector and Sir Kay opened the curtains of their tent when they saw Merlin approaching. Your hour has come, my lord, said the old wizard to Arthur, who was standing alone in the center of the tent. Silently, the boy walked forth as one in a dream. The crowd made way for them as they entered, for Merlin was still revered by all. But who could these other people be? Especially that young blonde lad dressed all in red. What was he doing here? Merlin brought Arthur before the archbishop and bowed. Arthur dropped to one knee. My lord, said Merlin, I present to you a most worthy candidate for this contest. Has he your permission to attempt to pull yonder sword from the stone? The archbishop looked down at the handsome lad. Merlin, we are familiar with this youth. By what right does he come to this place? By the greatest right, my lord, said Merlin. For this is the true-born son of King Uther Pendragon and Queen Igraine. The crowd broke into a loud clamour at hearing this. The startled archbishop raised his hands, but order was not easily restored. Merlin, have you proof of this? Asked the archbishop. With your permission, sir, said Arthur suddenly, perhaps I can prove it by pulling out that sword in the stone. Well then, said the archbishop, admiring Arthur's youthful boldness. You have my permission. If what Merlin says is true, may God be with you. Arthur rose and stepped up to the stone. He grabbed hold of the mighty golden hilt with both hands. A surge of sparkling warmth traveled up his arms, across his shoulders, and throughout his body. With one mighty pull, he pulled out the sword from the stone and lifted it heavenward. The blade flashed like lightning as he swung it around his head for all to see. Then, turning the point downward again, he drove it back into the stone with equal ease. The entire gathering stood dumbstruck for a long moment, trying to comprehend what they had just seen. Arthur looked to Sir Hector, then Merlin, and then the Archbishop. They all stared at him, with eyes wide in amazement. A child giggled and clapped in glee, then so did another, and another. Suddenly, a thunder of clapping rose up around Arthur. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Father." Then he grabbed the sword's hilt for a second time and withdrew it. As he brought it above his head, thousands of swords throughout the crowd were raised in solidarity. The Archbishop congratulated Merlin on the successful plan. So the coronation was set for May Day in the great Cathedral of London.